Welcome everybody to a new edition of Cinphomaniac Rapid Fire, where we give you kind of short takes on new releases. I'm a little bit behind on getting this one up, along with some of the other ones I've seen recently. If you haven't seen them on the channel yet, you should be seeing them soon, or the feed, I should say, if you're listening on podcast services. And those would be my rapid fire takes on House of Gucci and Come On, Come On. This one, however, is focused on Don't Look Up, which is the new film by Adam McKay, written and directed by Adam McKay, based on a story by Adam McKay and David Sirota, stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Jennifer Lawrence, Jonah Hill, Meryl Streep, Timothée Chalamet, Cate Blanchett. The list goes on and on and on of A-list and celebrity cameos. You got Kid Cudi and Ariana Grande in there, Tyler Perry. This film comes with a lot of anticipation, particularly as someone like me interested in politics, someone who, follows the work of a guy like David Sirota and has a high degree of respect and admiration for it. And McKay himself has always been an interesting person, not just in the films he's made, but some of the things he's spoken up about in the past related to politics and etc. And you don't make a film like Vice, which I have a very high amount of praise and respect for. And we'll do an episode on that for sure at some point in the future. I mean, you don't make a film like Vice, as good as it is, without having a real grasp or handle on kind of how to make an interesting sort of political satire and dissection of history and all that stuff. Well, Don't Look Up certainly is more in the tradition of a satire because it's a hypothetical, right? It's a all too real hypothetical, but a hypothetical nonetheless. It's a speculative fiction of a kind, right? Obviously, the premise of the film, it basically takes like the Armageddon or Deep Impact premise and just makes that like, okay, what if some scientists at a university saw a comet was coming to crash into Earth, and how would they react? What would they do about it? If they went to the government, like you would think they would do, how would the government respond? Well, as the trailers and the sort of glib tones of Jonah Hill would give away, is that they do nothing, or they mock even the idea of doing something. In fact, they have actual contempt for doing something about it. And if they want to do something about it, better be profit driven first and foremost, right? So that's kind of the movie I was expecting. And don't get me wrong, the movie is that, where it really comes into some trickiness is in all the other things that the movie is or isn't. I think that it's one of those films where I think it started off pretty, not strong, but good. And then it has this middle chunk where I feel like the movie just kind of seems to be spinning its wheels, and not just in the way that's relevant to the point where it's like, yeah, of course they're spinning their wheels because they're trying to get something done about something and no one's doing anything. I don't mean that. I just mean like the film in terms of where its focus and attention are and like how it's telling its story and the choices it needs to make about it is getting a little bit murky. And then the film kind of, to me, restores a lot of my confidence in the way it chooses to end itself, but it still shows the weaknesses the rocky road takes to get there. So I think ultimately was a bit disappointed in the movie. Not in some profound way. I think it's a film that I look forward to seeing again. I saw it in theaters. I think it's a great film to see in theater, I should say, because it's like, and this will get into like where I think the film kind of went off, but it is like a Roland Emmerich movie. Like I think that's what McKay was kind of going for in a weird way. I'll talk a little bit more of that in a second, but just to say that, yeah, there's actual spectacle and visual effects in this movie that I think make it interesting, and you should see it on a big screen and really get that impact, pun intended. And yeah, I think that's a great way to see it, but I'm looking forward to its release on Netflix on Christmas, just so I can like kind of watch it more and over again and see if like that improves some of it. I think it will to an extent. Because for example, like a movie like The Big Short, which I definitely liked, I think more than this out of the gate, even though I was less impressed by what was good about it. I think I've liked it more and more every time I've seen it. I've liked Vice in a way more and more every time I've seen it. So I'm hopeful that this film will restore some confidence to me, but I don't think my criticism are going to go away. And I mentioned the Roland Emmerich thing. Let's talk about that, because one of the things that this film does different than those previous two McKay post-Farrell comedy films have done is it it has some of the same, like it's shot on 35 in a very retro kind of look that makes it look almost like 16. It's got that fine grain. It's got this, in some sense, the verite energy, but not really. It's rarely handheld. He's not kind of doing the same style as those other movies. And those movies have a lot of narration devices and a lot of cutaways and a lot of this and that. Hank Corwin is still the editor on this film, but it's not really done in that same style. It's actually a style that, again, much more matches in a weird way a Roland Emmerich movie. It's just a Roland Emmerich movie that focuses on all the scenes of people talking in the science and the media, as opposed to just the big spectacles, which really only happens at the very, very end. And it's not that extended of a sequence or anything. The film kind of plays in that land. And I think it has some interesting things to say. I think the way it uses Leonardo DiCaprio and his sort of celebrity, because I think when I saw the film and saw the trailers, I thought it was really him really playing against type, and he is, but then the film kind of makes some pivots towards more embracing the fact that no, it's Leonardo DiCaprio. Remember, like, women love him, that type of thing. Similarly, like Jennifer Lawrence is playing a like very bitter person, but like ultimately like the sort of charm of Jennifer Lawrence and the attractiveness of Jennifer Lawrence have an impact on the story eventually, right? But I think where the film really gets it right, if I can focus on the good stuff about it, is of course, yeah, Jonah Hill's sort of glib attitude, the attitude of Meryl Streep as this sort of, what happens when Marjorie Taylor Greene becomes president type of person, or Lone Bobart or something, right? Freedom Caucus lady becomes president. All that lands very well. And I think it speaks to the same anemic thing you would see in just liberal discourse or Democrat Party discourse of like, oh, well, capitalism, and we don't really want to deal with this. Like in case of the extremes of like of a far right figure, it's like, not only are we not going to do it, we're actively going to deny it and punish those who do. And this whole don't look up campaign, right? That's all fine. But I think where the film gets more complex and interesting is the character played by Mark Rylance, who plays this sort of Tim Cook meets Elon Musk meets just name a sort of neurodivergent kind of reclusive billionaire, right? And that sort of archetype and the way it plays with that archetype and the way it shows and demonstrates the incredible danger and problematicness of the archetype, which isn't to mean that we shouldn't have sympathy or empathy or compassion for people who are different or neurodivergent or any of these things, but to give some individuals, any individual, such an undue amount of power, to have a system that allows for that. That's the problem with billionaires, right? To have a system that allows that and then puts it in the hands of people that maybe have priorities just even from a sort of basic neuro level that are different than necessarily thinking about other people in a tangible way. Oh, that's a danger. When you mix that with the sort of ghoulishness, the sort of gleefulness, like it paints all sides of this apocalyptic ideology at the center of this late stage capitalism that we have. Like you have your Bobarts and your ghouls, you have your billionaires who are more interested in going to Mars and the money they'll make there than they are in saving the planet as it exists today, right? It plays on all those things. And I think that stuff is expert satire. And, we have our sort of network moments, if you will. We have our mad as hell, I can't take it anymore moments, which are quite cathartic and powerful when they happen. But I think the film kind of loses itself in the middle of the movie. There's an emphasis on a subplot that feels very unnecessary and disconnected. It starts in a place where it feels relevant and necessary, but then quickly loses track of why it's there. And it just gets mixed messages and kind of lost in the weeds somewhere along the way. So I think that's ultimately why the film feels a lot more flat than it should. But check it out if you're interested. And it's I hope to continue to see where McKay goes from here.